both have backgrounds in sculpture, and we met through that mutual interest. I have to say, thinking back to first impressions, I wasn't all that enamored right off. Sure, he had a great accent, and he asked really hard questions, and he was a little fidgety, and he had a ponytail. It didn't take long, though, for me to realize what an amazing person he is. And over the years, John has become one of the colleagues I most respect and value. He works harder, longer, and more productively than anyone I know. And that is to say that anything he's involved in, he makes a big difference. He's a lot smarter than I am. He understands how things can become ideas that you walk through, squeeze, or smile at. If you ask him a question, he's more likely to show you something than to tell you something. He's not worried about boundaries or borders, and he exemplifies the notion of an expanded field of creative practice. He uses the word inquiry a lot. John holds an MFA in sculpture from Ohio State, an MA in art as environment from the Manchester Metropolitan University, and a design and technology PhD from Robert Gordon University. He's been at the Stamp School since 2008. Please join me in giving a raucous welcome to Dr. John Marshall.
Thanks. Good. Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. So I tolerate my name in lights only if I get to put it up myself. Okay, a word about where I'm from. I'm from a small blue planet on the fringes of a spiral arm in the Milky Way galaxy. That's why I have this accent. Actually, I'm from Scotland, which is about there in that image. I have an accent, as Aluna mentioned. It's typically the first thing I say when I give a presentation. So you might take a little bit of time to get used to what I'm saying, because my vowels are all messed up. Okay. And I pace when I present. Okay. So, Scotland. Many of you are thinking, this is what Scotland is. Let me tell you, this is more like my experience of Scotland. You may take our lives, but you can't have our heroin. Okay, so the title for this presentation is, Yes, the Space-Time Continuum. If you're expecting me to talk about physics, I'm sorry, this is the moment you should leave. The title is actually the answer to the question I most dread being asked. And that question is, are you an artist or a designer? What's your medium? That one always sends me into a tailspin because I just don't know how to answer it. Typically, I'll give some sort of smart-ass comment like the one on the screen. But this evening, what I want to try and do is explain why that's the case and talk about why I do what I do and how I do what I do and the mode in which I do it. So I'm going to show eight projects. I'm going to talk about systems, and I'm going to talk about agency in regards to those projects. And then towards the end, I'll get a little bit academic and put it all in a context. I've promised someone that I'm not going to use the words ontology or epistemology, so you can look forward to that. Okay. I am here as one half of rootoftwo. About 15 years ago, I decided that going into a studio on my own and staring at my navel was no longer what I wanted to do. I no longer wanted to operate in that mode of practice. So at that time, with my collaborator and my wife, Cezanne Charles, we founded a studio called rootoftwo. And since then, we've been working together. When I say collaboration, it might sound like we sit around holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That is not the case. It's a form of ideational Darwinism where we actually argue constantly about what it is that we're trying to do. And this is what I wanted from my practice. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to be pushed. I don't necessarily feel that I have anything to express. I want to find out how the world is and how it works. So we incorporated this year. So after doing business as and having partnerships in various parts of the world, we now have a fiscal entity that goes beyond us. And that, I think, is an important step because going beyond ourselves is what we really set out to do. So our tax code says that we do other specialized design services. So I kind of like that. Another way of thinking about what we do is urban acupuncture. We push little needles into the fabric of reality in order to make subtle changes to the system at play. So we're trying to challenge assumptions, undermine expectations, and reveal conventional behavior. And I'm going to talk now about how we do that. So root of 2, in sacred geometry, the square root of 2 is the division of unity. You can't have two ones. If you think about how cell division happens, you have a cell that divides, and that's how you end up with multiplicity. This is how we think about our collaboration. It's also an irrational number. Sometimes we behave irrationally, and we're quite okay with that. So there's Cezanne. Unfortunately, she's not here. She's somewhere in the air between Miami and Providence, Rhode Island. So, root of 2 is neither male nor female. It's neither black nor white. It's not European or American. It's a hybrid between all of those things. And we're very conscious of that. Since coming here to Michigan, we are a collaboration that now collaborates. So we've done a number of projects with Carl Dobman in his role as a principal at Apply Architecture and now at DOB, Design, Architecture, Urbanism, and Building. So we're a collaboration squared, a collaboration that collaborates. So hybridity. This is the bringing together of more than one thing. As Alona said, let's see if my pointer works. Oh, there we go. We are inquiry-driven. We all start with questions. You know, we want to find something out. That's why we do what we do. We collaborate, as I've explained, and we're technology-led. Cezanne's background is in theatre. We actually met while she was acting on a set I designed and built. So she does bodies in space. I do things in space. Neither of us at the time particularly did technology. Technology was the bridge between our disciplines. It was the things that brought us together. It was the lingua franca. It was the thing that neither of us did particularly well at that time and the thing that we could learn together. Okay, so that's root 2. So, systems. Complexity is a fundamental condition of knowledge. It's a fundamental condition of the world as I experience it. Whenever you're presented with an either-or, somehow there's something missing there. I think there's a sort of, particularly in Western society, there's an idea that you have this either-or, and that goes all the way back to Aristotle. So one of the things that we're constantly trying to do is to get beyond that Aristotelian logic, that either or. We want to find the point where there's either and or. We want there to be a moment where 1 plus 1 equals more than 2, right? 3 or more. So that's one of the things that we're constantly trying to do. Okay, so we'll actually get to a project now. So this is THR_33, and yes, that is the title. This was an invitation from the Museum of Modern Art in Kyoto, Japan. And one of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to investigate where we were at this point beyond the Kyoto Protocols. So the Kyoto Protocols, as you'll remember, is articles that were signed up to by 37 nations plus the European Union to tackle climate change. So at the point when I realized that this was what we were being invited to look at, it was like, oh no, this is going to be disastrous, this is going to be horrible, this is going to be grim, right? Because we're not doing so great in terms of like dealing with those issues. So that was our question. How do we turn this around so that we can deal this in a way which is fun, pleasurable, compelling, and beautiful? There's been a lot of discussion about sustainability. I don't buy most of it. Most of it, I think, is greenwashing. I think when we look at the systems and the values that we're dealing with, particularly in the industrialized world, we're really dealing with unsustainability. You could call me a pessimist. Some people say a glass half full, some people say a glass half empty. I see a glass that's half empty that Cthulhu sits at the bottom of, tormenting my nightmares. But Jonathan Chapman came up with the best argument I've heard on sustainability, and he says, the reason why we create so much waste is because we have broken user-object relationships. I think that's a compelling argument, right? So the secondary question for this piece is, how do we, if we treated our products, the things that we make, the things that we buy, as pets, if we love them like our pets, are they less likely to end up in landfill, right? So this is one of the arguments he makes in the book. He's talking about if our products were more like teddy bears or blue jeans, as they get older, as they begin to wear, then we love them all the more. So thinking, okay, so there's a proposition. What does that look like? So here is the tea house for robots, THR_33. There's the actual tea house, which has these eye forms in it, which open when you smile in the vicinity of the tea house. Inside, there are 3 robots. There's a toaster, a radio, and a kitchen mixer. And this is conceived as a place in the home of the future that your appliances go when they're not at work. So this is a place where your appliances are going to go and they're going to recharge and they're going to download new firmware and, basically reboot in order to serve you the next time you want to do it. In order to use them, to approach them, you have to approach as a happy person. So hence the smiling. So these were developed as instances of hybridization between vehicles, iconic vehicles, and iconic products. So we've got the Airstream trailer combined with the Dual-8 toaster, the GM Futureliner with the Bush radio, and the Dymaxion car with the KitchenAid mixer. So here's the toaster. So the toaster wanders around, and it's looking for somebody that wants toast. And when it sees you, it opens its drawers. And you can put some bread in, and it'll make toast. The radio scuttles like a crab. And when it sees you, it plays sound clips from old science fiction movies that are critical of humanity. It's a bit of an ass. The mixer, when it's working, it turns in one direction, over and over and over again. When it's on its own time, it goes wherever it wants. And they live in the tea house. The tea house is made of synthetic paper, completely recyclable. It's held together by folds, and it's woven together. And it's all laser cut, digitally fabricated. THR_33 sort of looks like the word three, right? If the threes are E's backwards. The tea house is actually three systems. There is a system of the tea house structure with the eyes in. There's a system of the robots, and there's a system of the Omron smile scan. The Omron smile scan is developed by Omron, who make medical industrial sensors, and they make a lot of ticket vending machines and things of that nature in Japan. They're based in Kyoto. Kyoto is famous for the invention of tofu and the invention of silicone wafers, and it's all about the water. So Omron are based there, and when we were out to visit, they said, which of our technologies would you like to use? Immediately keyed in on the smile scan, which basically will tell you your age, your gender, and how happy you are. So perhaps if you're a frustrated elderly person, it would give you the information in the machine, maybe with larger text, more clarity. That's what this technology was developed for. But in the tea house, this is whenever the tea house sees a happy person, the eyes open, which allows line of sight with the robots inside, and the robots change their behavior. So this is what the tea house sees. Happy, smiling people. This little girl is who this project was made for. This project took 2 years to develop. The smile scan we weren't permitted to take it out of Japan in case we decompiled it, reverse engineered it, and sold it. So we had to communicate via code. I don't speak Japanese. The engineer I was working with, Taisuke, doesn't speak English. So code was the means of language. So this was a backwards and forwards process for 2 years. But it all adds up to the moment where that little girl was standing there in wonderment at the robots inside. That's who we made this project for. Because if you have a vision of an alternative future, you have an opportunity to realize that future. In rootoftwo, we are unapologetically technophilic. We think that technology is part of course it's part of the problem, but it's the only way that we have any chance of a solution. Okay. Next project is another collaboration, and this is with Heidi Beebe, who I hope is here, and Julia McMorrow, and Seth Ellis. And what it is the starting point, the question in this one, the inquiry, is what can you get made in Detroit? Obviously, Detroit is very important in America's history as the birthplace of the automobile and the automobile industry, and the legacy of manufacturing and design that is here in Southeast Michigan. But here we are, a couple of days after bankruptcy, and post bailout, what can you still get made in Detroit? That's what we wanted to find out. We spent close to a year. We built a database of 400 manufacturing businesses in Detroit, located in the city. We worked with 10 students from Todman College that we trained and that went out into these businesses. We interviewed 50 manufacturing businesses in Detroit. This has resulted in a book, which hopefully is imminent, and a website. So part of the intention here was to really look at what is still possible in Detroit. Here we are at the University of Michigan, and we have young aspirational architects, designers, artists who need things to be fabricated. We have a lot of manufacturing businesses in Detroit that are running about 20% of their capacity. The automakers no longer provide them with the work that they once had. You know, things have shifted. One of the things that came out of this research was the fact that there was a huge shift in 1980 from businesses that were based around industrial production to businesses that are based around artisanal production. As I said, we interviewed 50. So there's no scientific selection process here. We spoke to the 50 that wanted to speak to us. But the thing is, it's really clear-cut that at the point in 1980, there's a shift happens. You know, so after the oil crisis, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, 1980 seems to be the turning point. So we think about the maker movement, we think about the third industrial revolution. But the thing is, it's actually happened, you know, much earlier than we thought by looking at this information. So what have we got in the book? We've got this graphical layout by Julia and Pooja Dalal that is, you've got the actual business, what they do, what kind of facility they've got, the types of products that they're doing, you know, the nature of their business, what kind of things they're doing it, who they're doing it for, some stuff about whatever production method they've got, whether it be sheet metal or silkscreen printing or, in this case, injection molding, the size that they've got, you know, who their particular industry relations are. So this is seen as part directory, part handbook, and part snapshot of Detroit now. You know, the only thing that's guaranteed is that the future's going to be different. So there are a number of historical vignettes included in the book by Mike McCulloch, and those are recording Detroit's history. So we're at an exhibition. These are some of the icons for some of the work types. Unfortunately, there's no artist or designer in this particular photograph. I thought it was funny, the beret for the artist and, like, you know, black with glasses for designers. Okay, and then there's the website. So retoolkitdetroit.org, and this is live, and we're in the process of transitioning this to Detroit Creative Corridor Center, who will maintain it and hopefully populate it with the other 350 businesses that we've discovered. Okay, so another project looking at systems. I said if we don't, when I was talking about the tea house, I said if we don't imagine an alternative future, we're never going to have one. This is really clear when we see the communicator in Star Trek, right? We'd been seeing that for 20 or 30 years before we got flip phones. When we got flip phones, it was like, of course we have this. This is what it is. Science fiction showed us the way. So, To Be Designed was a workshop that we organized. We brought together science fiction writers, technologists, cultural critics, hackers together in Detroit to speculate on what the future might look like. And we did this through designing a Sky Mall catalog from the future. I'm going to play a short movie that discusses this, and then I'll tell you how we did it.
Quite a few of these similar events where smart people get together and discuss the future and how we can change it or how we can shape it. It's always been the intent that at the end of this event there would be something, there would be an object, an artifact created, and I think that's a good ambition. There's a lot of talk in the world and a lot of writing and a lot of sort of thought, which is valid and vital, but it's always been our intention to try and make an artifact.
We're going to create something that is more than just a conversation. We're not just going to share ideas and drink wine and that kind of thing. What we're going to do is we're actually going to work in a very sort of aggressive way. We're going to try to accomplish a very specific, tangible goal.
So we ended up with a catalogue of, I think, 29 potential products or services from the near future.
It plays in that liminal space of, is it real on the design thing, a material object, or is it fictional, this sort of imaginary thing that maybe gets me thinking about what could be. I love these things that are just kind of like off to the side. They're almost things that you could very easily ignore, but we get them, we understand them, we understand how they operate as a sort of genre. We understand that it represents things that actually exist. And so the things that play in that liminal space the point that they make is that this thing may or may not be.
So, how did we do this? So we began with a kit, a brainstorming kit. So there are some cards that have objects and suggestions and things that you can move around and play with that throw up random generations. There's, some blank cards on a Sharpie so you can make your own. There are some dice, one with dots on, one without dots, so you can put your own dots on if you wanted to. There's a book of suggestions and company names from the near future. We sent these all out to everybody that was going to participate a couple of weeks before everyone met in Detroit. We spent a day at the Henry Ford Museum, and we looked through all the old archives. We looked at the artifacts they have there, everything from Thomas Edison's patent models to the collection of McDonald's Happy Meal toys. We brainstormed and came up with 200 or so products from the near future, and pretty much banal things that you might get at a convenience store or that you buy from a catalog. We weren't trying to do this big, grandiose, world-changing stuff. We wanted to look at, okay, so if these are the things that you're going to see in the Sky Mall catalog, the stuff that nobody really needs, from the near future, what might that tell us about where we are and where we're going? And then we marked these up on a number of spreads. And by the end of the 3 days, we had about 30. We've since continued to do this. We now have over 300, and we're actually producing an actual printed book, which hopefully, we were hoping for the end of the year, but it's likely going to be next year now before it comes out. And then there'll be a short film made by Christian Svans-Kolding, who made the trailer. But what we're trying to do here is we're trying to use our design skills, use our making skills in order to research, to think, to have this conversation, to engage with the systems of production and speculation about what the future might be, to understand better where we are now, the choices we're making and the decisions we make. Every time you put your hand in your pocket and you take out your debit card or your cash, you're making a decision. You're making a decision that has far-reaching ramifications. You're essentially voting every day for the world that you want to live in. So part of this is humorous, part of it is serious, but it's done using the skills that we have as creative people in order to envision the future that we might or might not want to inhabit in the future. Okay, here's another design fiction project. This is the Bug Out Location Tactical Shelter. This is an ongoing project that is, there's a lot of hysteria about drones, some of it very rightly, about drone strikes in Afghanistan. There's also what we saw last week about Amazon, or the doner kebab that you can have delivered via a drone. And we're not, I said we're technophilic. We understand that if we are going to make things better, then we are dependent on our technology. We're not worried so much about the drones. It's the people who are buying them that we might have some suspicions about. So this was a residency that we did at the Center for Land Use Interpretation, which is in the middle of 3.5 million acres in Utah, which is a military base. It looks like that. That's the salt flats. So this is me dressed up as Dr. Bolton, fictional character, who is part doomsday prepper, part human drone of the future. And we speculated about engineered textile shelters that could be deployed in order to avoid machine vision. So I actually did this as a studio for Taubman College this spring. So this is a nutshell. It's made by Ben Hagendorfer Daniel and Richard Tursky. And this is me blowing it up. And these are actually ammunition bunkers. And this project ended up as a number of shelters, which are for emergency use only, in these containers. And then this graphic training aid, 141421 is the first digits of rootoftwo. So, and these are instructions of what to do in case of the apocalypse. And this is where we did this. So this building is actually the Enola Gay hangar. So this is where all the training was done for the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's walking the line between the fictional, the humorous, and the very, very serious. Humor is an important part of our work because it's as much of a coping mechanism as it is for an expression of joy. So again, that glass half full, glass half empty thing raises itself again. And this is one of our drones that we took out there to film. So this project is not yet done. We're going to continue doing this. We're looking at other opportunities to do this, but we have a ton of footage that we are hoping to realize in some way in the future. Okay, second half. That's systems, thinking about systems. Thinking about what you can do about systems. Most of our work tries to put you in a situation where you get to reflect, you get to stop and think, okay, I am here, I am now, I can act. Any one of you could stand up right now and say, you're a liar and a charlatan, get off the stage. It's stuck on my cheek. Is that better? Okay. So any one of you could stand up and say you're a liar and a charlatan, get off the stage. If you did it, chances are people around you would look disapprovingly at you and tut. If 10 of you did it, then it might be a minor incident. If 500 of you did it, we're done. Right? So, thinking about what agency, you're always within a system. You always have agency. what can you do about it? So, a project that deals with this is Nora and Torvald. Nora and Torvald are chairs. They're chairs that are based on characters from Henrik Ibsen's play A Doll's House. So, there's A Doll's House. This is the first modernist play. It's really important. It deals with social lies. It deals with what is expected and what is mandated by society and contravening those things, those values. Also deals with interpersonal relationships and the taken for granted. So how do we do that in the form of furniture? So, Torvald. Torvald in the play is very upstanding, very upright person who works in the bank, and he's very aware of his social standing. He's very aware of his position. So Torvald makes you sit up straight. It's not a particularly comfortable seat. When you sit on Torvald, there's a sensor in the seat which turns on a webcam and starts streaming you to the internet. Nora, on the other hand, is a little bit unstable. She is in the play. She's described as being a little bird. So Nora is a rocking stool that tweets. Nora has a Twitter account. When people are sitting on the chairs have a conversation. So we have a library of selected texts from the play, from each of the characters, and when you're sitting or rocking, the chairs are having a conversation. So there is a discourse happening, and you are part of that. You're implicit within that discourse, but you're not necessarily speaking. These are also informatic technologies that you engage with through your ass. So this is looking at, the way that we would think that you would engage with technology, like the high tech, the smart, all this stuff, right? Chairs, you don't think about sitting in a chair. You just do it. You're all sitting at the moment. Well, most of you, You didn't think about sitting down. You pulled the seat down and you sat down. It's still a technology, right? So this is bringing to consciousness is trying to bring to consciousness what's actually happening all the time. You are here, you are now, and you have agency. What are you going to do about it? This project has had an afterlife in the form of a romance novel, a Mills and Boon romance novel, which is part of the Love Library, curated by Cheeto Johnson. It's been in several places. And this is really documentation of the project. Where it's another way of having that conversation in public. Okay, another project that deals with agency. We were invited to be part of a event here on campus by Arts Engine. And our design brief for this was fire. Great. So we began with the question, since we're all inquiry-driven, is how do you design fire? This is Carl Dobman and I. And we're like, okay, so we're at the University of Michigan. There's got to be someone here that can do this. So we went and found Werner Damm. Werner Damm, at the time, was the head of the Propulsion and Combustion Laboratory. He's now the chief scientist at the US Air Force. And we went to him and we said, we've got this project, we have to do this thing about fire. And he went, oh, okay, well, you can make this tornado out of fire. And I said, well, no, we don't want to actually do that. We want to understand fire the way that you understand fire. Werner's designing next-generation jet engines. Like, how do you understand fire? So this is Werner's equations. And he's looking at these different constituent parts of fire. And we don't really understand the math. Maybe some of you do. But what we took away from that was looking at, you have this system which reacts, it causes a chain reaction that flows through a system. So we came up with 22 aluminum cones with 600 red and yellow LEDs inside, a sound system with some subwoofers and things built into it, that when you walk underneath on the way into the Duderstadt Centre up in North Campus, in the entrance to the library, you get this rumble of fire and you get this flickering above. So we're actually trying to design the experience of fire without sparking a match necessarily. So the idea was that this would never be the same twice. So we've actually got a library of recordings of fire that are triggered as someone walks underneath. And part of the psychological experience of this was done about this time a few years ago, and obviously the Michigan winter. And people were convinced, they kept telling us that there had to be heating elements there had to be warmth because they felt it, and there wasn't anything. So this was an interesting experience where you have the software that the system is running, you have the hardware that the system is running, but you have the wetware that the people who are interacting with it are running. So you get this thing where the participant in the piece, the observer, the audience, actually becomes part of that system. That's really important to us. So that's fire. Similar project in that it uses red and yellow LEDs is Me Not Me. And this was done for De-Electricity, which is the Art and Light Festival in Detroit that is going to happen again in September next year. The Me Not Me phase is in child development. It's the point where a child has a blanket, a security blanket, or a teddy bear. It's the first thing that a child experiences that belongs to it, but is not it. And we were invited to do this project, and this is on the street in Detroit after dark, which you might think would be an unpleasant or threatening place to be. So taking that and thinking about the similar response to the Tea House for Robots, where, okay, how do we flip that around? How do we change, that expectation? How can we compel people to act with joy on the street of Detroit after dark? So this was a solution that we came up with, which is this huggable, squeezable tornado of light made out of translucent beach balls and two different kinds of netting that have accelerometers and LEDs inside. And the invitation was to participate with this so that it would respond. And we had these ball benches that could be sat on. And people really went for it. They went for it in such an extent that they kind of destroyed the piece. So here's some video. So there we are, at the corner of just where the Wayne State is. So, and it rained, so that was great. Setting up bright sunlight all day, actually open to the public, torrential rain. So the movement of the piece actually triggers lights. This can actually form circular patterns to the extent that actually sets up like a tornado. And this is some people poking at it. The second evening of the thing, this was a 2-evening festival. The second evening, there was a Tigers game in Detroit. And the Tigers won. The Tigers fans went nuts. So here it is. It's kind of looking a bit worse for wear. But it has this compelling effect where people just want to have their photo taken on it. This thing has an afterlife on Facebook, I'm sure. I hope you can see that. But at one point, there was 20 people sitting on it. There's some reinforcing structure inside. There's some 2x4s. The 2x4s got snapped. People were throwing themselves at it. At one point, a group of people grabbed it, pulled it over, and climbed up on top. And that's okay. When you put stuff out in public, you're really inviting people to use it as they see fit. And we're okay with that. So that was me, not me. Okay, this is what we're currently working on. And the question here, the inquiry, is, okay, so if we've done the industrial thing with the KitchenAid robot and all that kind of stuff, if we were to think of an agricultural version of the 21st century, what would that be? So we actually started visiting farms. And the thing that popped out for us was the Weathervane. What would a 21st century Weathervane be? So it seems that we're all really in the throes of like the news media. We have 24-hour chaos and panic being pumped at us. And really having that moment of you are here, you are now, and you can act. How do you respond to that? Well, you can respond like Chicken Licken, or Chicken Little, as you would say in the US, by going into a panic and thinking that the sky is falling. Well, Chicken Licken ends up in the belly of the fox. And this is going to be in the Folkestone Triennial, which is Chaucer country. So there's a nun's priest tale, another story about a chicken that has a run-in with a fox. So how can we become conscious of the way that we are responding to the information that we're being delivered? So this is a system that takes news feeds from Reuters news agency. It looks for keywords. In this case, we're using the keywords from the Homeland Security social media list, which we procured on the internet. So any time in the Reuters news feed, like any of the words, there's typos, what it does is it looks for where that's happened, because then Reuters has a specific formula of where the event is, what the event is. So if it's a bomb in Syria, our system reads Syria or Damascus or whatever. It finds the GPS coordinates. It looks through this list looking for connections to the incident that's happened. It calculates how far away that is. It comes up with a result, which is the danger over the distance, and then there's a impact on the chicken that makes it spin. So here is our Weathervane. And we're going to put 5 of these in Folkestone next year. And we're using the color coding from Homeland Security for the danger and the threat level. But we're also giving the public the opportunity to influence the system. So you can tweet, keep calm and carry on, or run around like a headless chicken, which is really the responses that we have in the face of the flood of information that we have. And this is going to happen here, which is where the Channel Tunnel comes out, which is interesting because we've decapitated the national symbol for France. And these are the buildings that we're going to put them on. So we have a pub, we have a cultural center, which is actually in an old office building. We have the former German embassy from World War II. We have this building here, this structure, which is actually next to a bandstand which has an existing Weathervane on it. And we have a Napoleonic lookout watchtower. Okay. So I said that rootoftwo, we have a hybrid mode of practice, which is inquiry-driven, collaborative, and technology-led. So I said I was going to get academic, so this is the academic bit. Okay, so I started out in sculpture, as Aluna said. And something that was really key for me was Rosalind Krause's essay about sculpture in the expanded field. And this was Rosalind Krauss looking at what was happening in the field of sculpture in America in the late 70s. So this is a negative proposition between sculpture being that which is not landscape and not architecture. So things like Robert Smithson's Spiral Jetty or Nancy Holt's sun tunnels. Rosalind Krauss expanded this so that sculpture is that which is not architecture and not landscape, which immediately puts it in a relationship with architecture and landscape. So for example, a marked site, which is landscape and not landscape, might be Spiral Jetty. That which is not architecture and that which is architecture might be Nancy Holt's axiomatic structure. And there might be something like that which is landscape and that which is architecture, which could be something, I don't know, Mary Miss, right? Something by Mary Miss. So, trying to put what I've been doing, what we've been doing in context. If I started out using digital design and fabrication technologies in sculpture, it's that which is not building and that which is not building design. I'm not using the word architecture and not, oops, I'm going all over the place. Not product design, which puts it into a context with product design, building design. So we have 4D space responsive environments, that which is building design and not building design. Critical design, device art, and design art. Product design, not product design. And that which is building design and product design, fabricated buildings. So there's a whole bunch of different publications that indicate that that's the case. And there's a whole bunch of different projects, some by former Stamps speakers. Any more? Yep. Any goes there. So obviously we've been bringing some of these people in. That's who they are. So if we expand on the expanded field, and we're thinking about this design, this thing, so I recommend the thing, of the expansion of design in the 21st century, to incorporate all these different disciplines and modes of practice. And then there's my version of it, which is the different fields, the different modes of practice, the different disciplines that we're engaging in the work that we do. And that's why whenever someone says, are you an artist or a designer? What's your medium? I go, yeah, the space-time continuum. Thanks.